Hello and welcome to the SportsGrad podcast. My name is Ryan Walker, and with me, as always, is the captivating Ruben Williams. How are you, mate?
G'day, Ryan. I'm fantastic, thank you. The T20 World Cup is upon us. It's 1 year to go until the Australian World Cup as well. It's been awesome being on the inside of the local organising committee for the last 6 weeks. So seeing that to come together has been fascinating and very nice to be a part of. But the big one, 2020 edition, is finally here. So I'm looking forward to that.
Whenever I think of World Cups now, I just think of Katy Perry and being on the field in my full test whites, which is what I wore to the game.
I remember lending you a pair of test whites for that game.
Yeah, I had the long sleeve. It was quite nice. But yeah, very good memories. Exciting. We'll be there in a year, I reckon.
Absolutely. I think I've still got some test whites left over, so we can get dressed up again.
Yeah, I have a couple of test whites left over in my closet, and now that I've finished at CA, I guess they're mine. Unless they give me a call and need them, but they are old, so I can't really use them anymore. So
yeah, exactly.
Anyway, let's get cracking, my friends. So, firstly, a message from our good friends at Deakin University, where every single course is backed by industry experts, so you can be guaranteed and confident that you're going to get the job you want with a degree that employers want. Deakin University, progressive real-world learning. We did just mention the World Cup in a year, and I did say we're going to go. And the only way we're really going to go is through Sports Where I Am, because they are a good friend of the show. And I would recommend everybody doing the same by visiting sportswhereiam.com to find all your favorite sports. Plus, you can use a special code, SportsGrad, 5% off your tickets, which is a great deal from our good friends at Sports Where I Am. So we'll be using them when we go to the World Cup. I'm sure they'll have a deal in place in a year's time.
Absolutely.
I don't want to speak too soon, but they definitely will.
And there's a big summer coming up this year as well, so plenty to look forward to in the short term.
If I had $1 for every time we mentioned the Adelaide Test, I'd be a rich man. So anyway, let's get cracking. Who have we got on today, mate?
Ryan, today we're talking to Max Abbott. Now, Max has had a pretty incredible career when you listen to the range of roles and titles that he's had. He's been in some very interesting events and has got some great stories to share. So Max is currently the media and communications manager at the ICC T20 World Cup local organising committee, and they're currently working towards the event being held in Australia 2022 next year. He's had a pretty strong sporting theme for his entire life. After he left school, Max worked at the Daily Telegraph for 3 years and then moved on to Fox Sports for 6 years as a reporter. And, during that time, like all of us, you and I particularly, Ryan, once you realise that you're not going to cut it opening the batting for Australia or opening the bowling, you begin to take your professional career a lot more seriously. And that's what Max did. And so Max started to volunteer at his beloved Eastern Suburbs Cricket Club, which then led to an opportunity with Cricket Hong Kong and eventually the ICC, where he's been an incredible part of some of these ridiculous events that keep coming to the ICC tournaments. In 2019, he was on the field when the Cricket World Cup went to a super over and England somehow snatched that. And then he was a part of the record-breaking Women's T20 World Cup in Australia, featuring none other than Katy Perry, of all people, dancing on stage with the Australian women's cricket team. So, and now he's part of the 2022 Men's T20 World Cup. So, incredible experience, incredible guy, some great stories, and one to look forward to.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things I loved about this chat was just the relationships piece and how important they were. A lot of people wouldn't really understand, but it's actually quite hard to get someone to write an article about whatever it is that you're doing. And Max explained this perfectly about, you can't just get someone to, write an article on the World Cup. There's an actual process that goes into it. So it's an interesting one. So it's great to hear that insight.
Yeah, plus he goes into great depth around the entire comp strategy that led to the record-breaking T20 World Cup for the women's event. You don't just get, close to 87,000 people in a stadium by accident for the first time ever for a women's cricket match. So for him to explain what was their overall objective, what are the key, points that they have to hit where they can get a spike in traffic and eyeballs, and the process to make it all happen was, a great insight to see what goes on behind the scenes for a tournament like this.
Yeah, awesome. My last one was just about the T20 World Cup comms matrix, which is this huge document that Max explained that basically, tells them what to say when something might happen. You never know what's around the corner. So didn't really know that existed either. I thought they might just have a couple of pre-planned things, but wait till you hear about this doc. It's quite huge. So grab a pen, enjoy this chat with Max Abbott. Max, welcome to the SportsGrad podcast.
Thanks, Ryan. Good to be here.
Max, there's a lot of places we could take this conversation because you've done a lot of very different things in your career. You've been a part of the 2019 Cricket World Cup, which went to a super over, which is incredible. You've done some time in Hong Kong, leading the charge over there. You've been part of the Women's World Cup, the record-breaking Women's World Cup there. And you also run a crypto podcast as well, which I'm sure will leak into this conversation somehow. But what we want to know to start with is, how did you come to manage the official website of Australian opening batter David Warner?
Thanks, Fruit. Yeah, well, that was one of my first jobs, actually. And that really just came from the fact that I was lucky enough to play a lot of junior cricket with Dave. So I think I first played with him when I was about 10 years old. So we sort of came through the juniors together. And I think it was after he made that, big 79 at the MCG where he sort of burst onto the scene before he'd played any state cricket. Suddenly sort of his profile went up, and his manager, who's a good friend of mine, said, "You want to give him a bit of help with his new website? We're running a few blogs and things like that." So Davey won't mind me saying this, and at the time, a bit of help for him on the writing on the website was certainly in need. So it was a fun little job just to start things off.
And has that carried over to all the TikTok videos that he's doing these days?
I play no part in those, but fair to say his engagement is a lot higher than what it was when I was writing his blog post for him. So,
yeah, the TikToks came out of the blue, didn't they? Pretty random stuff.
But yeah, it's just been
he's killing
one of those COVID things. I mean, even the ICC where we work now use TikTok, and sometimes I cannot believe some of the stuff that gets posted on there. This is a major global governing body, and here we are posting sort of meme videos on TikTok. But it's all in good fun.
It's a different world we live in, where it's all about the TikTok now.
Yeah,
we need to get a TikTok, Bruce.
We should.
Maybe we should start dancing on TikTok.
Well, must say, before coming on this podcast, obviously makes you just sort of look back at some of the jobs you did, and it's made me realize that, and I don't consider myself, too old at 34, but it makes me realize how different the media landscape actually is from when I first moved into it. I mean, there was no Facebook really for media, no Twitter. I was actually, when I worked at Fox Sports, I think it must have been about 2011 or 2012 when they started a Twitter account, and I was on, one of the few people that was sort of managing the news Twitter account there. And it's not that long ago that we were, and it's hard to really imagine now a news platform sort of going without Twitter. So it's pretty incredible how much things have changed in the last 10 to 15 years.
And it'd be pretty confronting as well if you'd just been through, a communications degree or a journalism degree, and then you get to your job and they tell you, we want you to run the TikTok account. And you're thinking, I've just gone through all this university for that.
Yeah, well, that definitely happens throughout your career. I mean, even with Twitter at the time, when someone said, well, we're going to get you to run the Twitter, and I mean, Twitter? I don't know how to use Twitter. I don't know how to, and you sort of got to pick it up and run. That certainly wasn't in any course that I did, how to, post and find the right audiences through Twitter. So it's a bit of learning on the run, trying to keep up, really.
Something else that's very new to the world is cryptocurrency. And when I found out you ran a podcast on cryptocurrency, I thought two things. One, how on earth has he got to figure out what cryptocurrency is? Because I battle. And two, I've got to listen because, as I just said, I battle, and this might help. But tell us how that started.
Well, it's a big rabbit hole. It's only been a few months, and this is a real exclusive because I don't even think any of my friends know that I do this because I do it under a pseudonym name of Max Power. So no one in the crypto world knows the real me. So which is definitely for the best. You don't need to know that Max Power guy. Look, I mean, it's just when I was in Hong Kong in 2017, I met a friend of mine who first talked to me about Bitcoin. And I was like you, Ryan. I had no idea what it was. It took me a long time to understand what it was, but just thought it was really exciting. The idea of having, complete custody of your own funds, right, having no intermediary or CEO. This idea that something can exist that has no CEO or central authority, that is completely separated. So I sort of just thought that was a nice idea and ended up just going down a big deep rabbit hole with it, really. And about a few months ago, 4 or 5 months ago, we've been in the game a while. There's a lot of people that don't know much about it, so I thought, why don't we just start doing a little weekly review either into projects or guides about crypto. So somehow that's somehow that's something that I do. It seems probably a bit random, probably to most people who know me, because they wouldn't even have any idea that I trade or own cryptocurrency. So
it sounds like you're preparing yourself for the ICC to open up a crypto department when they start to dip it.
Well, funny you say that, Ruben. Funny you say that, because they just announced, the ICC, about 3 days ago, a commercial partnership with FTX, which are one of the biggest global cryptocurrency exchanges. So
you'll be involved heavily.
So I didn't know. I just read that yesterday, actually, and I know they are looking at getting involved with NFTs and the like down the line. So watch this space, I guess, in regards to that.
You're well placed.
Yeah. Max Power, everyone.
It's a wild west. Yeah.
The cat's out the bag. You've been revealed. So
I know, the mask is off.
I love that. We'll check it out. I certainly need some
Max
help.
Power _ crypto on Twitter, I think, if you really need to. No, but no judgment, please, in some of the points that I've talked about.
No, that'll be followed by Walks the Walks, my Twitter handle. Huge Twitter account. I think 180 followers at the moment. So it's breaking the internet. Let's shift from cryptocurrency. Believe it or not, this isn't a cryptocurrency podcast. As we mentioned, you've had lots of experiences in your career. So what experience do you look back on and think those were the years where I really cut my teeth, and what have they taught you over the years?
There's definitely two examples of that. I mean, one was I volunteered at my local cricket club, Eastern Suburbs, and at the time I was a reporter with Fox, and I was doing okay there, but I was probably in third gear with myself there, not probably giving all of my energy into that. And when I volunteered for my local cricket club, and very long story short, I was sort of thrust completely unexpectedly into role of vice president there when I was about 24, 25. And I didn't know what I was doing. I was just sort of thrown into the role and realized very quickly in the first couple of months that this is really what my passion was more in that sort of sports administration role. Being able to make a difference in the community and bringing people together through sport was something that I found myself really getting into top gear with. And it's always a bit of a sign when you're spending more time on your voluntary job than your real job, which you guys might have some experience with this podcast at various times. So I think that's a bit of a moment where you realize, actually, I can really get the best out of myself in this area. And that sort of led to getting an opportunity up at Hong Kong, where again I was probably thrown into some situations pretty deep end. We made a decision to start a new T20 franchise cricket tournament there because there was a spare weekend at one of the grounds that wasn't booked, which is a big deal in Hong Kong. There's only 3 grounds. And so we're like, well, we could do a T20 franchise tournament. And I was like, yeah, but it's 6 weeks away. I mean, what could we realistically do in 6 weeks? Yeah, have 4 teams. Like, we'll sell the franchises. They can have some overseas players. And there were 3 of us involved in this, 2 good friends of mine who've had a lot to do with my career. And they voted for, yeah, we can do it. I said, no, we can't do it. I said, well, who's going to run it? And they said, well, you are. So so suddenly, but in 6 weeks, we sold 4 franchises. We got Michael Clark to come and play at the event, and it sort of just got way more, viewership on the whole thing. It got sort of way bigger than ever we thought it could have. And, that was just found an intensity in my own working in that 6 weeks that I didn't know that I had when the real sort of time pressure is on to deliver something that your name is on. So I think that was kind of the moment where I thought, I can actually, I've got a pretty high threshold here if I really push myself.
That's awesome. And it sounds like where you were able to flourish came from the fact that there were very loose boundaries on what the job entailed. Like, a local cricket club is, they need certain things done, but the scope of it is largely undefined. And I imagine that'd be similar with Hong Kong as opposed to being in a well-structured state international body. Is that what do you think allowed you to kind of, implement ideas, use your initiative and start to form a career?
Absolutely. That was the best thing about doing both of those things, the voluntary stuff with East, was sort of, I was able to, at least in a more lower profile environment, be able to probably, either make mistakes, and met a lot of good people, because obviously we had some great people on the committee there that I learnt from. And then in Hong Kong, I really like getting hands-on in lots of stuff. And I think, at Cricket Australia, you don't get the luxury of being the guy that's responsible for the marketing, the broadcast, the comms, selling tickets. You'd be pretty busy if that was the case. So at Hong Kong, you get that sort of rare opportunity that you wouldn't get elsewhere to be really hands-on across the whole business. And I think, especially, fast forwarding to now being in a comms role, it's so beneficial to just have that experience across all the different touch points of the business, because comms really does connect into the whole show.
Max, one of my favorite quotes comes from Woody Allen. It goes by 80% of success is showing up. And I'm wondering, are there any significant sliding doors moments in your career where you happen to be in the right place at the right time?
I've had a few of those. Some would say that in my career path I've been quite lucky, and I do consider myself that I have been lucky. Some might say I'm not the most spiritual person, that maybe you manifest these opportunities and things come to you if you're really clear about what it is you want to do. So I started off at the Daily Telegraph. I went and actually played a bit of cricket in England. So you sort of leave your job and go and have some fun for a while. Came back, wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to do, but I said to someone, I'd love to work at Fox Sports. It was like the one, I was clear. I thought that'd be the place where I could really, sports nut and get in there. And that seems like the place for me. And about, I don't know how long, but I'm going to say within a month or two, I was at a bar with a few friends, and I was with said, "Oh yeah, here's this, Bernie Cohen. I just met him last night, and he's just going to come out with us for a few beers." I said, Hey Bernie, and he was a reporter at Fox Sports News, so he came out with us for a few drinks that night, and I was just talking. We had a few mutual friends because I worked at the Daily Telly, so in the media game. And then I said, would if I sent you an email or something, would you be able to put me in touch with someone great to just come in, even just for a couple of weeks, to have a look and see how things work in there. And so I did that, and he lined up a chat with the boss of Fox Sports, and I walked in there, and where I had played cricket the previous year was the same county that he was from. So it was quite a good starting point for a conversation. Played cricket in England. I said, I played in Northamptonshire. He's like, I'm from Northamptonshire. And it's like, oh wow. So quite an incredible sort of sequence of events that sort of led to getting that opportunity. And he said, there'll be some casual shifts, I think, with the website. They're looking for someone. So I did that. 2 weeks later, like 3 people quit, and I got a full-time job. So, I think there's either some really excellent manifestation or a lot of luck, one of the two. So, so I did have some good fortune to sort of get my start there. And, by being involved at East, so the guy on the committee there ended up getting a job as Hong Kong cricket CEO, which was how I was able to go up there. And then, actually, when I was in Hong Kong, I was thinking to myself, I'd love to work on the T20 World Cup. And someone volunteered to help us out with our commercial projects in a voluntary role. And that person was Nick Hockley, who came up to help us out. And so I was sort of mentored by him for over the course of 6 months. I had no idea he was going to be T20 World Cup CEO, but when I sort of came back to Australia and saw, he was in that position, I thought, at least there's someone for me to talk to about the role and find out about it. And I obviously still had to go through the whole process, but certainly, it was very helpful, insight to be able to have. So, there's definitely been a few sliding doors moments. So I do consider myself quite fortunate in that regard.
Well, you've continued to put yourself out there. Like it's very easy to go meet someone at a bar and think, oh yeah, he didn't actually message me the next day. But, you continue to do that and then you get that opportunity. Or, a lot of people think, oh, I should volunteer in my local cricket club committee, but then never do because they think, oh, whatever's going to come from it seems too far away to even fathom. But if you don't do that, you don't go to Hong Kong, you don't meet Nick Hockley. Nick Hockley doesn't get you into the World Cup, and here you are now. And so I think, it's such a great example of what can happen if you just continue to put yourself out there.
Yeah, and I think it's the way as well that you try and seek people's advice and help along the way. For example, people who sometimes might, message me on LinkedIn or saying, I'd love to work in, T20 World Cup. Here's my resume. It probably is something that I personally at least wouldn't suggest going about it that way. Whereas if you're volunteering at a local cricket club, message me and say, hey, I'd love to just chat to you for 30 minutes about what we're doing in our local club and if there's any initiatives that we might be able to, implement here or any advice that you've got. And I would 100% say, yeah, sure. And that would apply to most people, I reckon, in cricket who would be willing to help. Yeah. And then you build some rapport with that person and, build some trust where it's very difficult to recommend or favour anyone on a real sort of blank cold call. So, and just being proactive about it all, actually actioning the things that you talk about. I briefly gave the example at Fox. I really probably sat at Fox and was, I suppose, reasonably passive. I was there for 6 years. I didn't move forward that far while I was there. And I just kind of waited for opportunity to come to me while I was there. I was, I think, a decent enough reporter, but I was sort of just the guy who did impressions in the room for a bit of comedy and didn't really probably, proactively push my case forward to do the extra miles to make it known that I was not only keen to develop, but actually willing to put that into action. And I kind of learned that from watching other people around me at the time who did that and showed real application and consistency in their work ethic, in their relationships that they built with people, and they accelerated really quickly. So that was a big lesson that I got from being at Fox, that, you need to have that consistent energy to put yourself out there and sort of back it up with a bit of action and be proactive about it.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Like, I can imagine it'd be hard because you might not know exactly where you want to get to, but at the same time, you don't want to sit on your hands and just kind of wait for things to happen. So I can get why it'd be hard to, just to pinpoint that and actually show that you want something without knowing exactly what's on offer. Like, I think that's a challenge for a lot of people.
And it's the way you approach it. So it's not just saying, I'm really keen, I want to do more, or, I want to develop into this. Yeah. To actually come up with suggestions and things you can do. I mean, I did it occasionally at Fox, come up with a story idea. I'd love to go and shoot something on this. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 ideas I'd like to implement. Like, they're the kind of things that I think managers or mentors are going to respond really well to. And even, I know someone like Nick Hockley still does it today. We'd be in meetings at the T20 World Cup. We're not sure about what direction to go. He goes, I'm going to phone, so-and-so and get them on the phone now, ask them what they think. And he'll just ring them up and ask for advice. So and he's probably the most brilliant mind that I've ever worked with in my career. And, he's got loads of people that he asks advice for. So if he's still got to do it, then there's no excuse for anyone else.
That rings a bell. I remember hearing him say something about calling up the head of ticketing from one of the airlines in the UK, because ticketing is obviously a massive thing for them. And to hit up someone who's extremely experienced doing a similar sort of task, but in a completely different industry, is obviously, it's going to be very useful, but you might not even think to utilize that sort of resource that you've got on hand. So, yeah, it's cool to kind of hear some of the inner workings of Nick Hockley.
Yeah, no, he's brilliant. He's a big one for mid-meeting. He doesn't wait until after the meeting to make the call. He'll literally make the call with you sitting in the meeting there. Doesn't wait, which is, again, something I've learned probably from him, is like there's no time like now to get something done a lot of the time.
Yeah.
It's all well and good to have this list of actions for after, down the line, but let's get them done. Let's get them out of the way while we're on a roll. So it's kind of something that I've sort of tried to adopt a little bit as well.
Yeah. And shout out to Nick, obviously he'd be listening. So great friend of the show. So hello, Nick. Max, in 2020, who could forget the MCG was filled with 87,000 people for the final of the Women's T20 World Cup. Obviously, that doesn't happen by accident. What role does the communications department play in making that happen?
Well, it's absolutely critical, as you can imagine, Ryan.
Just a little small role. Like they just play their part.
Well, the thing about events is a lot of parts come together to make something like that happen. And I did see after that final, a lot of people said, "Oh, you were so lucky. Australia made the final. You had a perfect day of weather. Australia, India couldn't have dreamt it any better." And that's true, but it wouldn't have happened if we hadn't had 2 years of pretty hard work to actually build that up to a point where if we got that sort of situation, we could really make the most of it. So the communication strategy for us is really, in a major event, is to map out a roadmap of milestones and areas where you think you can generate some spikes in interest in the event. And it's pretty difficult. We're at that stage now for the men's. When you're a year, 2 years out, there's not a lot of people who are getting super excited, for an event. People have got more immediate concerns, but it's really important just to have a consistent drumbeat to work towards every month or two. And the amount of times we said across 2 years, come and be part of a world record on March 8, International Women's Day at the MCG for the ICC Women's T20 World Cup final. We said that consistently over 2 years, and for 80% of our time, in that first 80%, people are like, "Oh, that's nice." But when the switch flicked about a month before the event and people started getting excited, suddenly the phone is going in the other direction and we're getting calls, and people were already quite familiar with our story. So whilst it wasn't necessarily generating hype a year out, we'd sort of done the work over the last 12 months to just consistently deliver that message around equality, build our own credibility as an event that what we were trying to do was genuine through all of our messaging. And I think in the end, all that work we did to bring all the partners on board the journey with us was what sort of was the end result in what we got, which was, I think, 86,174. I think in the end we didn't quite get the world record, but close enough.
Still a very good achievement. I don't know if you remember this, Max, but I remember somehow, you won't be surprised by this, Ryan, I found my way up into one of the corporate suites where the T20 World Cup local organising committee were having their post-match function, and everyone was kind of congregating there after the game just to kind of celebrate, 2 years of hard work and capped off by this incredible tournament, incredible World Cup final. And I'm not sure who you were sitting with, but you had your phone open, Max, and it had the photo of Katy Perry with her fist up in the air, surrounded by the Australian women's cricket team, and you were like, "That's it. That's the photo." And like, only you as a comms guy could probably appreciate like the significance of how perfect that image was. And in an ideal world, with your role, you probably try and, shape occasions where you get that sort of outward facing activity. Obviously that one turned out to be, an incredible circumstance, but what are the other things you have done in the 2 years leading up to that are outward facing that, are planned activities?
Yeah, well, the biggest one was the fixture launch along the way. That's sort of it's the one day in a cricket major event where you've got some major news to deliver in terms of these are the matches. This is where they'll be. It's a little bit less. Some of the other milestones like 1 year to go, 100 days to go, might be a trophy tour launch are all quite nice. You can create nice moments that are shareable and newsworthy, but launching the fixtures is actually, so they sort of speak for itself as being something of interest for people. And that is a big day because we have 7 host cities and all obviously have partners in all of those cities. So each of those obviously have different messages on the day. So we'll have a central event. Last time we had it in Sydney. I think this time we're going to have it in Melbourne early next year. And so we have a big stakeholder event for 100 people. We release all the fixtures. You have to think about how visually you're going to sort of release those fixtures. And then you've also got 6 simultaneous media calls in host cities around the country because obviously in Sydney, they want to talk about the matches coming to Sydney and Perth and et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of preparation goes into preparing all the materials to be able to give to those partners that are relevant to them. So what the ICC global media release for that says, what the Perth release says, what the Adelaide media opportunity looks like, their graphics all look different in each of those markets. So, and that is purely because, people are going to be more engaged by, getting content that's really specifically relevant to them. So that's kind of the biggest piece of work that we have across the project to really just bring together every single stakeholder that we have and deliver them sort of communications materials to be able to get things out to their audiences. So, and that's sort of what this role in the LOC is all about. We actually don't own a hell of a lot. Like we're not the ICC, technically. We're not Cricket Australia. We don't have any players that represent the local organising committee that we can just call upon kind of at any time. I think all we own is a trophy, basically, that we can take to various places. So, but we have an enormous amount of partners, which is what makes this event fun. You think about every single government, venue, sponsor, Cricket Australia, all the member nations that compete, the ICC. There's all sorts of people that bring our event to life, like Kojo, who do all our event presentation. There's all these sort of agency partners. It spreads really, really wide. And you'll notice, Ruben, from having been involved, once you start listing out all those channels for all those different partners, the list is huge. They've all got email databases, social media, various other channels that they've got links in with. So it's a big piece to just make sure you're listing out and spreading that message as far and wide as you can. So, and you've got to make it as easy as possible for them to be able to help you out, because ultimately, whilst they are partners, their staff obviously aren't dedicated resources to help the T20 World Cup. It's really our role to give them the tools they need.
So it sounds like, first step is like, all right, what's the key message? When are we going to push it out? What channels can we push it out to? And then a whole heap of back-end work to make sure that every single message for each of those channels, even though slightly different, is on point.
Yeah, and even before that, it's being really clear in your objectives. So, for us, the local organising committee, the main thing is about getting the stadiums full. So, which obviously means selling tickets. So, with that being an objective, the second is, we've still want obviously to grow the game, and a real focus for us for the men's event is going to be about increasing the representation of multicultural Australia in media and in Australian sports. So sort of with that in mind, you start going, okay, well, these are our objectives. Here are our milestones we can have along the way where we think we can have some spikes. And then within those milestones, you build out plans. What channels can we build, for 1 year to go, which is on Saturday? What is the whole list of channels? And Ruben, you'll be familiar with some of these, from all these government partners. What can we tell each of these guys on 1 year to go? What do we want them to know? And at this stage in the project, it's more just about awareness that the event's happening and the event dates. So we make sure that that's really clear in the messaging. And we want them to know that they can register now to get early access to tickets. So we'll just have, with that being the objectives, that it's awareness and registrations, you then sort of build that in to your messaging. So into those specific plans.
How does that work with getting print media involved? So say you mentioned one of your objectives, getting broader coverage of multicultural representation. How do you get a journalist to write an article about that within the T20 World Cup?
Yeah, well, I suppose you've got to find, that's the gig, I guess, is to find ways to do that. And it's getting more and more challenging with the actual media sort of shrinking in size every year, it seems. And there's certainly a lot more rigor around what media are wanting to publish. There's not many free kicks out there. So you've just got to find the stories yourself. I mean, and they do exist out there. We're working very closely with Usman Khawaja, who's got a fantastic story about coming to Australia when he was 6 years old, not speaking any English. And he's had some incredible experiences through cricket and the way in which that has sort of shaped him as a leader for multiculturalism in Australia. So, you know, you might think around the India-Pakistan match in the T20 World Cup, there's an opportunity for a different slant on that, what is one of the biggest matches in the world that's upcoming in a couple of weeks' time. And you've got an Australian who's very much, you know, friends and family circles, you know, celebrate that India-Pakistan match. And so there's an opportunity there for some really unique insights. So you think about what journalists might be interested telling this story, and, you know, having been in the media game for a while, you build up your contacts, but you've really just kind of pick and choose the right stories for journalists that, you know, through a personal relationship, you think that they might have an interest in. So, and that really can only be built up over time. I mean, it's very hard, you know, if you're new and coming into the media game or comms roles, and you don't necessarily have the biggest network. It's just something that comes with time and being at more events where there's media involved. And, you know, you'll find after a while that gets easier and easier.
So it sounds like the success of that role with print media literally comes from the person's networks.
Plays a big factor. Yeah, plays a big factor. And the ability to come up with stories that are interesting to the media. And you need the networks, not only in the media, but also to get the talent too. So, with Australia away and with quarantine, it's not easy to try and do that these days. But again, having now been involved in the game for a while and actually played junior cricket with Uzi, so another, you know, probably by playing cricket has probably helped my network too, because people that I played with in my younger days, you know, have gone on to be pretty good players and involved in the cricket system. So, which is certainly helpful, and also gives you a bit of a player's perspective in terms of what are the things that might bug them, or what they might want to talk about, what they might not want to talk about.
You seem to have played with a lot of good players. Just wondering what happened.
Wow, yes. Look, dodgy back a little bit. No, I was never quick. I was masquerading. I masqueraded into a few first grade games in Sydney, but I was a second grader through and through. But, you know, just happened to play in a little golden time at Eastern Suburbs Cricket Club, where they had a lot of international players that played a little bit. So, we had Brad Haddon, Nathan Bracken, and Warner in the same grade team, certainly on one day there.
Whoa, wow.
And like Pete Forrest, who played for Australia, Sam Robson, who played for England, Will Somerville, New Zealand. There's a whole bunch of internationals in there. And then I just bowled my 10 overs into the wind at the start. They got me out of the way. Hopefully I was all right in the dressing rooms afterwards. Maybe that's how I helped hold my spot in the team.
Yeah. Whilst you're tweeting live updates as well.
Yeah. No Twitter then. That's how long it was since I played.
Max, I reckon, like, from my experience working with people in comms, they seem like the busiest people ever. Like, their phone is just always going off. Yeah. So I would imagine one of the big skills is being able to, you know, work long hours and always be switched on. Are there any other skills that are just unique to comms that you need to be successful?
Well, I mean, it's probably in the name, but writing skills are just fundamental. I mean, it's very difficult to be a good comms guy if you're not really confident in your own writing, because you've got to be able to bang out copy for various things quickly and know how to structure your sentences and write efficiently. So if you're struggling with those skills, it's going to be really, really stressful being a comms. But yeah, I mean, I think it's just remaining calm as well. Yes, your phone is always, it's an all-encompassing role. I mean, and I love it, and I'm passionate about cricket and my role, so I don't mind. But if it is an all-in kind of job, you get calls, you're on call all the time. Effectively, people want to ring you up if something happens. Fortunate thing of being in events is that we do a lot more proactive media and planning ahead, whereas at Cricket Australia, they obviously have day-to-day issues that come up that they don't know about until they read the paper in the morning. So, and that's kind of your day can be shaped completely through managing those, whereas I don't have that issue at the moment, at least anyway. So I think just writing, and it's just being proactive. I think in comms, if you've just got to try and take every little opportunity that you can get to, whether it's get a story out there. The sort of opportunities are endless, but I think just being proactive, getting out there, whether it's pitching stories in, coming up with ideas, thinking of new ways to do things. It's not a role where you can sort of sit and wait for big things to happen or for a journo to give you a call for that. Great. So you've really got to be proactive and make things happen and have lots of energy.
Coming back to that crisis management piece that can hit an organisation at any point in time, is that something you get taught in university? Like, what's the process to dealing with that? Because I'd imagine you probably have to be prepared for anything at any point in time in terms of what message the organisation puts out following the event.
Yeah, and there are lots of different comms roles. I mean, to clarify, there are people who are a bit more on the PR side, which is probably where I've been. And there are people who are just really good at crisis comms, that's their thing, and that's really they're the people you want to be close to or phone up when things start going wrong. It's just planning a lot of the time. So we have documents like a spokesman matrix where we'll say if certain issues about certain things arise, this is the person who will speak about issue X, Y, Z, and we'll have a key message or two already prepared. And so we have a long document for the T20 World Cup of all things, and invariably there's stuff come up that you just isn't in that document. So I know from last time we had stuff in there about bushfires, COVID. This is before COVID really struck, but was sort of in the news. We did have some planning in there. If the ticketing site goes down, if the website isn't working, all these issues are listed out, and we just try and think of, and we review those probably every 6 months or so. We'll have a look through and say, have we got everything in our crisis? We call it our crisis comms document. And that'll list out who's going to talk, what's the process if this happens, who's going to talk, and then these are the key messages. So at least if something happens, you've got something there straight away as a starting point. And then from there, you've just kind of got to use a bit of your own intuition and experience from there to navigate things. And I reckon the other key thing in crisis comms is don't always feel like you have to control everything. It's very easy to get panicky about things are going wrong. People are saying bad things about my organisation, but there is a news cycle. The sun comes up the next day. We're playing cricket. We enjoy it, and it's not nice sometimes when things are. We all want things to go well all the time, but also just drawing breath, zooming out for a moment, and often things aren't as bad as they seem.
Do you recall the day that the 2021 Men's World Cup, which is now the 2022 Men's World Cup, got postponed?
Yeah, well, that was a big example of preparation. So we didn't know whether we would be postponed to 21 or 22 for that event. So obviously we knew there was a very good chance we weren't going to get on in 2020. But we had to prepare materials for both situations. So we wrote press releases, key messages, built materials to send to all of our partners, graphics, the whole lot for both scenarios. So I think there were actually 3 scenarios. Might have been one if there was no decision about when it will be played, a postponement, or it's going in 21. So yeah, you just had to build 3 lots of comms so that once the board made their decision, whatever that was, then we've got it all there and we're ready to go. So that's probably a good example actually of it's just a situation where you just got to plan for kind of all scenarios.
Do not envy your role in that situation.
Yeah, look, to be honest, crisis, touch wood, I've not been involved in any absolute major crisis to this point, or things that have come up really unexpectedly. And I think working in major events, you do spend more of your time actually looking ahead, thinking this would be really cool. We could do a photo like this, and that's be a nice story. And you start phoning, which is the part of it that I really enjoy. I'm far less interested in dealing with people's issues.
Understandably so. Max, we've mentioned a lot of your awesome roles on the podcast so far. What would you put your success down to?
I think in the end, being proactive has probably been the number one thing, and making the most, I guess, of some of the relationships that I've been able to forge over time. And it's been quite nice actually thinking about this podcast, to actually think about all the people who've helped me. And I've had so many people that have across however long. So I just think it was having the energy to either, if I know people, ask for advice, to admit that I don't know everything to people. I think just being vulnerable and being able to ask for help, I reckon that has been the key in the end. And I obviously probably playing and being involved in my local cricket club, which I started when I was age 6, and I played through the grades, went on the committee. That whole network and community really was the starting point of my network branching out completely. So I'd certainly encourage, particularly anyone involved in cricket, but I'm sure it still applies in other sports too. Volunteering, if you are interested in sports administration, whether it's comms or any part, actually putting your hand up, not just to go on the committee, but to really contribute and to want to make a difference. I think if your heart's in the right place, and I didn't volunteer on the committee to further my career. I furthered it because I really wanted to help the club and thought it would be a good experience for me, but it wasn't why I did it. So I think local sport is a great place to start and sort of, start building your network.
It's a great message. I think, it's very easy to join one of those committees and just volunteer your time and turn up for the sake of turning up, compared to volunteering your initiative and your ideas and willingness to grow the organisation like you have. So it's
people respond to that. That's what people will respond to. If people see that energy, it's infectious. So if you're working with someone who's, coming up with good ideas, getting stuff done, being a genuine help, you're going to connect more strongly with that person. And you just never know where building those connections with people will take you.
Totally. Well, Max, we might leave it there. It's been awesome chatting to you, just learning about all things comms and your job at the moment at the T20 World Cup, and hearing about some of the experience you've had as well. Obviously, Hong Kong, Fox Sports, and cryptocurrency, of course. But it's been unreal to just hear how it all happens from inside the inner sanctum, and just keep Ruben in check for the next couple of weeks. I think he's with you, so just keep his head level. So he'll be just fine. But thanks again for coming on.
Thanks, Ryan, and well done to you guys for all the work you're doing. You've done a great job with this podcast. A bit of a tough act to follow to come on soon after Hamish McLaughlin, but appreciate that. But no, it's good fun, guys, and well done to you both.
Thanks very much.
Cheers. Well, Rubes, that was an all-time chat with Max Abbott. I personally loved all the comms chat and also the cryptocurrency piece at the start. It was quite interesting. So I'll have to check out good old Max Power. But what are some things that stood out to you?
Yeah, I think I'm going to open a crypto wallet as well after talking to Max. But I love what he said, like right at the end. His whole career started from his opportunity at the Eastern Suburbs Cricket Club. And I loved what he said about how he put his name down to be on the committee to make an impact. And because of that, his career benefited. Rather than going on the committee to benefit his career, he's done in reverse, and he's got a better outcome for it. And so I think for anyone listening to this, we continue to advocate for it and drum home the importance and impact of doing this. But volunteering in community sport with the purpose to make an impact just gets recognized by so many different people and opens so many different doors for you that you can't begin to explain where it can take you. But Max is an incredible example. As we said, he literally would not have met Nick Hockley and got the job at the ICC had he not put his name down to me on the committee. So, if I'm taking away one thing, it's join the committee.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the bit where he spoke about how, he went for a drink with a couple of people that had mutual mates, and one of them worked at Fox Sports. And the opportunity arose that, he could get in touch with this person and possibly get an opportunity to go and see how they do things at Fox Sports. So I guess the message there is that, be really proactive to get yourself in those situations, but also don't let yourself down and don't follow up on it, because he could have easily just not messaged that guy. He could have just been like, maybe he didn't mean it. Nah, he like stuck with it, messaged him, and got himself that opportunity by following up. So I love that bit. A lot of sliding doors moments.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Like, don't let your good work go to waste by not doing the second part. Other one for me was just like learning how entrepreneurial the nature of a comms manager is. Like, you literally have to create every single opportunity yourself. You have to have the contacts at the publications. You've got to be out there networking. You've got to know what story to tell. You've got to be like jumping on every opportunity that comes up all the time. Like, it's not one where you can just like sit back and accept a list of tasks that you have to do for the day. Like, you really have to be quite proactive. And so, if I'm looking to becoming a comms manager in the future, I think one of the best things you can probably do now is start to build that network now, so that when you do step into the role, you're ready to start creating an impact with the network that you've built.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that wraps us up. Be sure to connect with us on LinkedIn. We'd love to chat with you on there. You can find a link to do so in our show notes. Thanks for listening. See you next time.